In this video, I will demonstrate how to apply modern DevOps by deploying an inventory application composed of microservices using React, Node.js, and Java. From the cloud-native Toolkit website, click Workshop, and then click on Microservices Inventory App. The lab for today, we're going to deploy a 3-tier microservices using React, Node.js, and Java. Please make sure that you set up the workshop by configuring a cluster, installing the toolkit, and set up the workshop environment, and also installing the toolkit CLI. I already did that in my terminal, so I'm going to skip that. And I already did the OpenShift cluster setup. The next thing is we're going to go into our OpenShift console and logged in as one of the user assignments. So if you are using IBM Cloud, go ahead and log in with your IBM account. If you're using OpenShift in another cloud or on-premises, like myself, I'm using VMs on-premises, you will have a Realm IBM Toolkit, so click on it to log in. If you're the instructor, probably you're going to use user 1. If you have students, they can select user 2, user 3, and so on. And password is just password. And logged in. Return back to the instructions, and we're going to set up the environment. So let me move my window. First step is to configure the toolkit username that you'll be using for the lab. So copy the command, paste it. If you're using a different user ID like user 2, you can click delete or backspace and then change it. I'm going to leave it at 1, hit enter. The next step, like I mentioned, if you already logged in IBM Public Cloud, use that account. You don't have to do this step. If you're using OpenShift in another cloud or on-premises, then this is the OC command line to log in as user 1, for example. So copy and paste the command and press enter. Then the next step is for user 1, we'll be using projects and namespaces that start with project 1. If you're user 2, project 2, and so on. So copy that command to set the environment variable, paste it. Like I said, you can click backspace and then change it to user 2, project 2, or project 3. I'm going to leave it at project 1. For the next step, we're going to run the command ocsync to create the project or namespace we'll be using for our CI/CD pipelines with the suffix dev and project 1, for example. So copy the command and paste it. This command will copy config maps and secret from the tools namespace to their current namespace. If the project or namespace is not created, it will be created. If it's already created, it will just ignore it and just copy the config maps and secrets and synchronize them. So for the first microservice that we're going to be deploying is going to be the Java backend. The Java backend connects to a in-memory database or a real database. So that we're going to go to the developer dashboard from the OpenShift console and select the starter kits. In there, we're going to find the inventory service for Java. Go to the Git repo, fork a copy. If we need to log into the Git server, then use your user 1 or user 2 with the password. And then you're going to actually fork the repository. So let's do that. Go to the OpenShift console, click menu, and launch the developer dashboard. In here, you can see that we have tools shortcuts, we have our learning resources. Go to starter kit. In here, the other labs have used the microservices here. Templates and patterns, we're going to be looking at the 3 inventory microservices, the inventory service for Java, inventory BFF, which is a GraphQL implemented with Node.js using TypeScript, and then the inventory UI, which is the web browser user interface implemented with React. So we'll do the first one, inventory service, click Java. This brings us to the repository that we want to clone. So every user will fork this repo and then clone it. So click fork. If you need to log in, then use your user ID, user1 for me, and then password. Then leave the name as inventory management service solution. This is important as these are going to be the microservices names in OpenShift for the repo. Once its fork is ready, every user should have a copy of the Java backend. So this is a Java application. Return back to the instructions. And then the next step is we're going to get the Git URL for this repository. So we're going to copy and paste it to get an environment variable set for that Git repository that we just forked. So in this case, it's this one. Then the next step is we're going to run OC pipeline. Pipeline is provided by the Toolkit as a OC plugin. And we're going to pass, in this lab, we're going to show some capabilities of passing parameters. So we don't have to clone the repo if we don't need to. So to register a pipeline with this Git repository. So it's going to pass parameters tecton, the Git URL, the branch that we want to use, and some parameters for the pipeline. So copy the command, paste it. So this command created the tecton pipeline, copied the tasks, created a tecton trigger, a webhook, and went to the Git server and registered the webhook to now connect the Git repository with the pipeline. As you can see, you can run the tecton CLI to see the logs or describe it. We can go to the OpenShift console, go to the project 1 dev, which is the namespace that the CI pipelines will be running. Click on pipelines, and then you will see a pipeline running for this inventory management service, which is the Java one. Click on last run, and as you can see, all the steps will be done for these microservices, and we're going to be doing the same thing for the other two microservices. So return back to the instructions, and we'll do the second one. Second one is the inventory BFF, which is a backend for front end in TypeScript. This will be a GraphQL for that the UI will connect to, and then this microservice will connect to the Java microservice backend. So there's a connection there. Go to the developer dashboard, and then click on inventory BFF, and do the same steps again. Click fork, leave the name as it is, and click fork repository. Now every user, I'm user 1, every user should have a copy of the Node.js GraphQL backend. Return back to the instructions, and then in here we're going to construct the Git URL for that Git repository that we just forked. Let me clear my screen. Copy the command to set the environment variable and hit enter. The next step, we're going to be doing the same thing. We're going to run OC pipeline, but against these different Git repository. So copy the command, paste it. Once that's done, as you can see, the pipeline started. If you go to OpenShift console and hit pipelines and hit, you will see that now there's a new pipeline for the BFF, and there's a pipeline run that is running. So let's move on to the next one. The next one is a React application. It will be a UI. So go back to the developer dashboard, select inventory UI, click on it. Then in the Git server, click fork, leave the name as it is, and click fork repository. Now in my user account for user 1, I should have the 3 microservices. Return back to the instructions. And now let's copy the command to construct the environment variable for this Git repository. Press enter. Then we're going to run OC pipeline to register a new pipeline with this Git repository, passing the command line arguments. No need to git clone the repo for this example. Copy the command, paste it in the terminal, and this will also create a new pipeline and register a Tecton trigger with a webhook. Once that's done, you go back to the pipelines and you should see now 3 pipelines running. So we have the 3 pipelines running. We can see the UI that is running, and it's the same steps. There's a different lab that you can take a look. It goes into every step on what are the tasks that are implemented and what are the quality gates that go on every step. So you can do that lab. That's the CI pipelines with Tecton that goes deep into it. For this lab, we're going to show how to deploy 3 microservices. Return back to the instructions. And then the next step is going to be we want to set up the application with the 3 microservices to be able to be promoted to different environments. For example, QA, staging, production. So we're going to be promoting the application from to QA using Argo Cd, using a Git repository called GitOps. So for that, let's construct the GitOps Git repo that all the users are sharing. So this is a typical scenario where an organization have one GitOps repo sharing multiple applications. So copy the command. Let me clear my terminal and paste the command in there. For this repo, we need to add files. So we need to clone the repo locally. So let's copy the command to do the git clone, paste it in the terminal, and then we'll have access to the files. As you can see, if we do list the files under QA, we only have app under QA project 1. We have only the application from the first lab that was a Go application. We don't have the inventory management apps. So we should have 3 directories in this folder: BFF, service, and the UI. Right now, we just need to wait for the pipelines to be done. So we have to wait around 50 minutes. So we'll do a coffee break and I will stop the video and then return. So after a few minutes, let's check if our pipelines are done. We go to OpenShift console, click on pipelines, and then you will see our 3 pipelines, and the last task, the last run is done, which you can check one of the pipeline runs. In this case, we'll use the Java one, and we're going to work with the last step. So the application, we want to promote it to the QA namespace project 1-QA using Argo Cd. So let's move to that section. Go back to the instructions, and now you can check that the Git repo is populated with these 3 folders. We can go to OpenShift console, select menu, select GitOps, and this will bring up the Git server. We'll go to QA and project 1, and then our pipelines are pushing for every update. Is always updating these 3 folders in here. That's the same repo that we just cloned in the terminal. In the terminal, we can do a git clone, a git push, a git pull to make sure that we have the latest copy. Then we return back to the instructions, and what we're going to do is we can list the content of each folder. And you can see we have 3 definitions here. Each one has a helm. Moving on to deploy the application in the project 1 for QA, We're going to be using the Toolkit Helm repo or chart that basically allows you to create, instead of creating an Argo Cd application 1, 2, and 3 times, we can define a YAML structure here that defines the 3 applications, the Git repo that they're located, the branch that they're located, the Argo Cd project, and then this Helm chart would eventually go and automate the creation of Argo Cd applications for each one. So what we need to do is create a Helm chart that contains this in a folder in that Git repo, and then push it to that Git repo. So click copy and then paste it, and then hit enter. You can check that the files are pushed in the Git server. If we go back to the GitHub, we can refresh in here, and now you can see that we have our chart.yaml and values.yaml defining our 3 applications and the directories that are located in the branch, the Git server, and everything needed to deploy. So return back to the instructions, and the next step is we're going to create an Argo Cd application that points to this Helm chart. So let's open Argo from the menu in OpenShift, click menu, Argo Cd, and then I'll move Argo Cd to the side so I can see the instructions side by side. Go to the instructions, and then we'll create an Argo Cd application using the UI, but you can automate this also, this process with the CLI or the API or CR. Create, click new app for the application, give it an application namespace with your project, so it'll be project 1-inventory. For project, this is a Argo Cd project, not a OpenShift project, so select default. Sync policies, select automatic, select prune and self-healing. For the Git repository, we want to point to the Git server that is in OpenShift through the internal service. So paste that value in here. You can leave head or master as the revision. And then for the path, we're going to select QA project 1. That's the folder that we just put the files in. For destination, we're going to select in cluster. And for namespace, we're going to select tools. This is the place that the Argo Cd application is going to be defined, not necessarily where the microservices are going to be deployed. It detected that there's a values.yaml in that directory. So you can see this will be the information, and this is where it's going to locate. So you can see it has a target namespace called project 1-QA. So for user 2 will be project 2-QA. And that's it. Let's hit create. Now we can filter by namespace. So we can put project 1 if you're user 1-QA and see the applications that are in that namespace. So as you can see, Argo started creating the 3 applications, one for the BFF, the Java one, and the React one. And it will take a minute or 2 to deploy the application. So Argo is deploying each microservices independently. The CI/CD is running independently, and that way, if there's a bug or a feature to be implemented in one of the microservices, you don't have to modify the other 2. So the application should be running in our project 1-QA. So let's go to OpenShift and then switch to the project 1-QA, and we should see our application. Select topology, and this is our 3-tier applications. The Node.js GraphQL talks to the Java, and our mobile UI in React talks to the BFF. And that way you can use the user interface to talk to the BFF, and the BFF talks to the Java, and Java is talking to a in-memory database or for development, and also and a real database when it goes in production. To open the application, you can select the web UI and select the routes, or select the UI. So it looks like they're up and running. So let's select the URL, inventory app. The application is doing a query with GraphQL, accessing the inventory of the database through the Java microservice. Return back to our instructions. That's the end of this lab, and this is a way that you can use Argo Cd to promote applications to QA, and then you can have another Argo Cd application similar to this for staging. So that way you have a folder in QA and one folder in staging. So that's the end, and thank you very much.